Finding an awesome sunscreen when you have oily skin can be tricky. So today I'm sharing some of my favorite SPFs for oily skin. I'm Dr. Sam Ellis, and I'm a board-certified medical and cosmetic dermatologist in Northern California. I'm here to help you understand your skin and find products that work for you. So if that sounds good, give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Before we get into the actual sunscreen products, I want to say I don't have oily skin. I have dry skin, but as a dermatologist, I know how important it is for everyone with any skin type to find a sunscreen that they love. I'm lucky because a lot of my patients are skincare fanatics. So whenever I have a patient who has oily skin, I ask them what sunscreen they use and why they like it, and oftentimes they'll even bring it into their appointment for me to try. I also love picking the brains of my followers in terms of what they enjoy using on their skin, so if you have oily skin and you're watching this, definitely share your favorite sunscreen in the comments below. And without further ado, let's get into the sunscreens for oily skin. First up is the Eucerin Oil Control Sunscreen SPF 50, and there are two versions of this sunscreen, one that's based in the United States and one from Europe. So the US version is actually one of my favorite chemical sunscreens, even for someone who has dry skin, and that's because it's very moisturizing. And I have to admit, when I first tried this sunscreen, I was kind of surprised that it was marketed towards those with oily skin because it is so moisturizing and it doesn't really have a matte finish on the skin. It has more of a radiant type dry down. It's certainly not dewy or wet, but it's not as matte as I thought it would be. So I really envision this being best for people who have mildly oily skin. I think if you are really oily, this is going to feel too creamy or thick. But one thing that's important to note, and I talk about this whenever I discuss oily skin, is that even if you have oily skin, your skin can still be dehydrated or lack water. So sometimes I find that a lot of the mattifying sunscreens or other types of skincare products geared for those with oily skin don't have many hydrating properties. So if your skin is dehydrated, you need to be doing that as well. Now, the European version of this sunscreen is honestly incredible. I wish it was easier to get in the United States. It's much more of a gel cream in formulation, so a lot lighter weight. This also has more of a matte dry down, and I'll admit I have not tried as many European sunscreens as I would like to yet, but one of my patients, her mom lives in France and sent her a bunch of different products to try because she has oily skin and struggles with acne, and this was sort of the winner of the bunch, so she brought it into clinic for me to try, and it was incredible. Whenever I talk about products for oily skin on my Instagram or even on TikTok, this sunscreen comes up so much in the comments because people love it. Another sunscreen for oily skin that I absolutely love is the Cotz Prime and Protect SPF 40. So this is a very lightly tinted all mineral sunscreen, and it very much feels like a silicone-based makeup primer. So for example, if you've used the Supergoop Unseen sunscreen or the Trader Joe's Dupe, that daily facial sunscreen, those also both have sort of that silicone-based primer-like feel to them. The reason I like this sunscreen for oily skin so much, aside from it having a really nice matte dry down, is the fact that it also has a pore blurring effect. And for those who struggle with excess oil production, the appearance of the pores on the face can also be larger. And so the fact that you can kind of minimize them or sort of diffuse imperfections on the face with something like this is an added bonus. And of course, because it has that primer-like texture, it also sits really beautifully under makeup. I actually saw, I think it was on YouTube, a video once of a makeup artist using this as an eyelid primer. So the fact that you could use this as an eyelid primer on oily eyelids, which is another thing that a lot of people struggle with, kind of amazed me. I also think another nice aspect of this sunscreen is that it gives you 80 minutes of water resistance. The next sunscreen on my oily skin list is the Australian Gold Botanical Tinted Sunscreen SPF 50. So this is a tinted all mineral sunscreen that comes in 3 different shades. I find that the shades are fairly neutral and even lean a little bit cool, which I actually like for a tinted sunscreen because I feel like a lot of tinted sunscreens can actually be a little bit too orange or warm toned. In terms of the texture of this sunscreen, it sort of has a slightly whipped, moussey texture as well, but it's not as silicone-y or quite as primer-like as the Cotz sunscreen. And although this dries down fairly matte, it does have a bit of radiance to it. This also has 80 minutes of water resistance, which is always a nice bonus. If you watched my favorite tinted sunscreens video from a couple years ago, this made it on the list as well. I really like it because it's incredibly affordable. It's around $17 or $18 for 3 ounces, so you get a lot of product. This is one of my top sunscreen recommendations, especially for my teenage patients who are just starting to become oily. A lot of times they're also starting to have their first breakouts and they want to start wearing makeup, but maybe they're not really ready for a full-on foundation. So using a tinted sunscreen like this that also offers some oil control is a nice balance. Another sunscreen that's way up on my list for oily skin is the Kose Suncut UV Perfect Gel. This is a chemical sunscreen that has some advanced UV radiation filters that aren't available in the United States. I love this because it is incredibly lightweight and it dries down on the skin almost instantly. Some of that is due to the alcohol in the formula, and I know people always get nervous about having alcohol in their skincare, but if you have oily skin, alcohol in skincare can be a huge plus. It helps with the dry down of the product and it makes the texture so much more elegant. This also has zero white cast and is really easy to reapply, and that's another reason I love it so much. If you have oily skin, I find that sometimes it can feel kind of yucky to reapply products on your face, especially a sunscreen, so the lighter the weight, the better. And sometimes when I talk about Asian sunscreens on this channel, people are like, well, where can I buy those reputably? So I'll make sure to include links in the description box. Another sunscreen that I absolutely love for oily skin is the Bioré UV Aqua Rich Watery Essence. This is an SPF 50 sunscreen and is probably one of the most popular Asian sunscreens. Similar to the Kose sunscreen, it dries down pretty much instantly and it just works so beautifully for reapplication. It's also my favorite sunscreen for reapplying over makeup because you can kind of stipple it or pat it on the skin without it building up or leaving a white cast. This is also a chemical sunscreen and does have quite a high alcohol content, but again, I really think that adds to the performance of the product. And then just a note for people who are sensitive to fragrance, this does have fragrance. And then the last sunscreen I want to mention in this video is the Skin 1004 Madagascar Centella Hyaluronic Water Fit Sun Serum. This is an SPF 50 sunscreen and I actually included it in my favorite Korean sunscreens video not too long ago. This is one of my personal favorite sunscreens, and again, I know I have dry skin, but when I shared this sunscreen, I had so many people tell me like, hey, I have oily skin and this also works super well on my skin. And I think that's because it's just incredibly lightweight and dries down well, and you don't really feel like your oil or your sebum is building up underneath it. This also has Centella Asiatica, which is a nice calming ingredient. So if you are oily and acne prone, I also think this is a great option. And like I mentioned before, oily skin also needs moisturization, and this is quite a hydrating sunscreen. So if you are oily and a little bit dehydrated, go for this one. If you have oily skin, definitely share your favorite sunscreen in the comments. Also, if you're looking for other types of sunscreen content, either for different skin types or for special occasions, also put that in the comments. I want to make videos that help you. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.